Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Mongooli Show. Today, we're joined by my brother, and we're going to go over our top 5 twist endings to movies. Now, it goes without saying that this is going to be a very spoiler heavy episode. So, if you want to keep watching, I greatly appreciate that. But just know we're going to spoil the crap out of these movies. Jonathan, how are you doing? Are you ready to talk about your twist endings, your favorite twist endings?
I am all set and I'm feeling great.
Fantastic.
I've
Now,
been
it's
fighting a
worth
cold all
mentioning.
week, but I am feeling great now.
Cool.
Sorry.
Uh, we'll just edit that right out.
Yeah, that's probably
All
for
right.
the best.
Yeah, most of this. Um, it's worth mentioning that when this list was presented to us by the audience, one of the things we were discussing was doing top 5 twist endings or shocking endings. And the further into this list I got, the more I realized those are two very, very different things. So I did, for my list at least, get rid of the shocking endings and I went entirely with the twist endings. Did you do something similar to that?
Yes. And that really trimmed my list down. I realized so many of the movies we kind of associate both together until you stop and think about it. There's a big difference between a plot twist and a
Yeah.
surprise, they all survived. I didn't know how, but look how they did it. Yeah.
Okay, so for me, a shocking ending is just something that happens really abruptly and maybe is like within the last 2 to 5 minutes of the movie, and it just kind of leaves you to the theater where you're going like, "What? What just happened?" But it doesn't change the context of the movie.
Yeah.
Whereas a twist ending, it kind of does the same thing, except now you got to go back and be like, "Oh, I kind of want to see that again. I want to
Yeah.
see can I pick up on it now that I know what the twist is?" And it just changes the entire definition of what you were watching for the last 2 hours.
Yeah.
So that's what most of my movies do is they're ones where they're like just mind-boggling changes as opposed to just like, oh, the hero dies.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
which is shocking because everything has this kind of predictable, familiar story arc going on, and I love that already.
Yeah.
But it's not the same as having a plot twist or like a shift in the hero going from good to bad. That kind of a thing is really interesting. The storyteller not being reliable. There's a few different words for that I found out as I was researching for this episode.
Yeah.
I didn't write anything down because I'm not that guy.
Good call. Good call. Definitely don't want to be prepared.
Yeah.
I was going through my list and I'm kind of torn. I'm back and forth a little bit on whether or not I give the nod to which I think is a better movie or which ones I think are a better twist. Because there's some of the ones where the twist is really, really strong, but the movie itself isn't that great to revisit. Whereas some, maybe the twist is a little bit less, but the movie is so good that it's like, well, I definitely want to rewatch that one over and over again, anyways.
As I filed this list down, I found that I was coming down, for the most part, to movies that are both rewatchable and had a really good twist. And that's where I think I struggled to get a full five, getting to both of those. But I did
Okay.
have a few where I really have appreciated the movie over and over. I find there's a lot of twist movies. There may be good ones. You know the twist. Even knowing there is a twist kind of takes the air out of the tires a bit.
Yeah.
And then to rewatch is not really. You're there for the twist the first time around, and once that you've been on that ride, it's kind of done.
Yeah.
Um, and I think there's probably shocking movies and twist movies that would fall into that category. They're not necessarily bad movies; they're just one-time use only. So yeah,
Yeah, I definitely felt the same way. Whereas if I saw a twist coming or if I knew about the twist, that definitely just kind of lowered the experience for me. So some of those ones where like some of my honorable mentions, let's say, have big twists in them, but I knew about them before I started the movie, or they were so predictable that you're just kind of like, okay, like we saw that coming just by starting the movie.
yeah, exactly. I watched one this week, getting ready for this, that I hadn't seen, kept showing up on different lists. I had it cracked 15 minutes in. I went back and checked when that was, and I was like, that was inside of 15 minutes. It was 14 minutes and something on seconds, and I'm like, that's not right.
Yeah, I'm
Because
curious
word
about that
does
one
get
when we get to your
around.
honorable mention.
Dishonorable mention,
Oh, fair enough.
prestige. So yeah, I feel like word gets around. People know these movies have an interesting twist by the time you get to see them a lot of the time. And if it's that like face forward that you're on it that early in the movie, it really does kind of, now I'm just watching it to finish the movie and see if I'm Yeah, I was right. It's kind of boring. Yeah.
Fair enough. Fair enough. All right. So now that we've kind of got over our list, we know exactly what we're talking about. What is your number 5?
Oh, geez. Um, so
You
this
didn't see that coming?
I
That was a
didn't see
shock.
that coming. Yeah, that was
What a
a twist.
twist!
Yeah, they're all twist movies for me. uh,
If your memory's bad enough, they're always a twist.
this is one I stumbled upon just doing some research for some of the other films. No spoilers. And I'd kind of I this movie stuck with me, but I have only seen it once a long time ago, and it had a really good ending. This is the life of David Gale, um,
Ooh.
from the mid '90s. I'm gonna say,
Yep. Yep.
and I really it's a little bit political, I guess. But in spite of that, not because of it, I really did appreciate kind of how the story unfolded there. So I didn't go back and rewatch this one. I don't think it's one that would stand up to rewatching over and over. But as a one-time use kind of movie or a single serving sort of friend, it I thought it did a really good job.
Nice. Yeah, this is definitely one I have seen a couple of times. This Kevin Spacey on death
Kevin
row, right?
Spacey on death row, and
Laura Linney.
if we want to go ahead and spoil it
No.
right now, because I love spoiling, the plot twist is that he's this anti-death penalty activist, and he basically constructs a scenario where he will get wrongfully convicted of a crime, put to death by the death penalty, and then after he's killed, uh, it will come out. He will leave proof that would have exonerated him to demonstrate the flaws with the death penalty. So, like I said, a little bit political flavor to it, but it was a really well constructed twist, I thought, and probably going back to it, probably not that rewarding. So I kind of left it alone on purpose.
Yeah.
I hope I got most of those details right, having not rewatched that one. But
No, that sounds right. I've seen that one probably twice.
okay.
I don't know that I've seen it a third time. It's a really powerful story. I mean, Kevin
Hmm.
Spacey is phenomenal, especially
Always,
back then.
yeah, yeah.
Uh, it's not a particularly fun movie, but I feel like even when you know the twist of that one, it's still an
Still holds
engaging
up.
story.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Maybe I should try that again.
You don't have to. I mean, it's pretty dark, let's be honest, but all right. So my number 5 is one that probably people are going to yell at me for simply because it's not higher up on the list. And that is The Usual Suspects. This one came out in 1995 and actually did pretty okay on a very, very small budget. Most of the people in this movie actually had to take a huge pay cut because they wanted to work with Bryan Singer so much. So they actually took like way less money than they're used to taking. Kevin Spacey, even though this is fairly early on in his career, probably would have got paid more than this entire movie's budget would have if it had been a major blockbuster movie. Only $6 million budget, but came in for $23 million, which is decent. My issue with this movie is I remember loving it when it first came out, and the twist is phenomenal. Everybody remembers who Kaiser Sose is. I haven't enjoyed it nearly as much trying to rewatch it recently. Like, I've got that movie poster in the basement, and this is one of the movies on that movie poster. Amy and I
Hmm.
tried to watch it maybe like a year ago, got like halfway through it, and both just kind of looked at each other like, want to do something else? Like, why not just like, eh? So for this one, I was like, no, I gotta finish it. It's for the movie poster. It's one that I have to know because like when you
Hmm.
think of a twist ending, this is one of the first ones that comes to mind. So I was like, I have to try it. I have to give it another shot. Again, put it in, and it's not bad. It's incredibly well acted. All the characters in it are phenomenal, but just something about it just is not nearly as gripping. Knowing what the story is and knowing where it's going, you're just kind of like you said before, you're just kind of waiting for it to get there.
Mm.
And it's like, so it's fine. A part of me wonders, like, maybe I missed something. I just watched it, but like, admittedly, I was also kind of playing on my phone because I was a little bit bored. But what? Okay,
Judge
so Verbal
face.
Kent, yeah, for sure. As I said, this is going to be the tough one. Verbal Kent is Kaiser Sose. He's the mastermind behind everything.
Mhm.
Why does he stick around to let himself get captured on the boat? Why does the entire movie take place? Like, he gets
Yeah,
captured.
that's an interesting point.
he goes to the
I'll
police
give you that.
station.
Yeah,
He gives testimony of some kind to getting immunity.
yeah.
He
If
talks to an
he's
officer
half
he
as
doesn't have to talk
powerful,
to,
right?
and then he leaves and gets in a boat, and you never see from him again. Like, it's not like he had to go to the police station to steal something or to kill somebody.
Well, I
Why
think
does this movie happen?
the only thing that makes sense there is that he enjoys the
That's just it.
performance, right?
That's just it. Like, he
He
just wanted to
knows
prove that he was smarter than the cops. That's the only thing I could get.
exactly, and he literally says something like that, right? And so I think that is exactly it, right? Like that he is the puppet master, but if there's no one enjoying the performance, then
I
what's the
guess.
point, right? So he's got to get off on it somehow, and I think that's his like taking a bow, sort of, right? But you're right, like that part is pretty thin plot wise, because they don't even make that point explicitly, right? It's just, yeah, why is he caught? Why is he arrested? Why is he still there when the cops show up? Why is he still there when anything goes down, for that matter? Like,
Yeah.
he could have started shuffling away like 2 hours earlier. Yeah.
Well, and also talking about the unreliable narrator.
Yeah.
He's the only witness to this.
Mhm.
You know that the police lineup happens because the police knew about that,
Right.
and everybody's dead at the end.
Yeah.
And
Everything
everything
else,
in between is just him making up a story and like using things that he finds on the bulletin board.
the
But like
corkboard, yeah,
none of it's necessarily real at all. Like you're just
talking,
watching Kevin Spacey just like talk for 2 hours, and it's just
yeah,
like,
snowing a cop. Yeah.
what is the point of this? I don't get it. But it's fun. The twist is amazing if you didn't see it coming the first time. But it was one of the ones where, like, as I said, there's a movie on my honorable mentions that I
Mm.
like significantly more than this movie. But the twist in this movie is so much stronger that it deserves a spot on the list regardless.
Yeah. Yeah. The first time through this, that twist just blows you away, right?
Yeah.
Like that is an excellent twist. I remember watching this on video, so I think that I'm part of the problem with that $23 million gross, uh, because I think it had more legs than that, and I think it came out across on video. I
20
think it had a longer life later on.
$23 million in 1995 for a $6 million budget is not bad at all.
Oh no, and
That's a
that's
good return on investment.
for sure, yeah, and it was definitely part of that whole like lower budget, very interesting plot, very interestingly
Yeah.
acted 90s indie scene that was kind of going on. It's not really indie, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Kind of taking that flavor to the box office, right? And so yeah, I on the other hand, I really enjoy this movie. I rewatched it with my kids, getting ready for this show. Two of them had never seen it. Obviously older kids.
Hope so.
I call them all kids. Uh, um, and my son was the first person I've ever seen kind of called it at one point. He's like, I think this guy is that Kaiser Soze. And we're like halfway or so. And I was like, nobody's ever said that. But he also said about 9 other things, just talking nonsense. So he doesn't get full credit for that.
I think this guy's Kaiser Soze.
That's right.
Oh, maybe
yeah.
that guy's
If you
Kaiser
say it
Soze.
every
That
time
bird might be
someone
Kaiser Soze.
recognizables on screen. Yeah. But yeah, half marks anyway.
Yeah. It's always the dog with the shifty eyes.
And in fairness to you and your low attention brethren, my kids were also playing on their phone at one point, I think, during the movie. And I was like, guys, come on.
It's also like the
I
ninth
couldn't
time I've
believe
seen
that.
it.
So, yeah, I would say I'm probably there for sure. And I enjoyed it again. I'd seen it about 3 or 4 years ago, recently ish.
Okay.
Probably maybe before, during early COVID. And watching it again now was still enjoyable. These are phenomenal actors in this movie. It is such a well acted movie.
Yeah.
You don't see a lot of other stuff by Stephen Baldwin, but as far Benicio del Toro, Gabriel Bryan, and Kevin Spacey, like, yeah, it's a great cast.
The one thing I have to mention, or I guess one of two things I have to mention before we move on, is everybody already knows this, but just for like the one person who maybe doesn't, the lineup scene, the guys got the giggles while they were doing that scene, and so the fact that they're laughing and carrying on is 100% accurate. Like, that's actually what they were doing, to the point where Bryan Singer was pissed off at them, like, guys, get it right, get it together, and they just couldn't. They just were like, now they're just having fun making each other laugh. And so they
Yes.
just like ended up like F it, call it for the day, just moving on,
Nice.
and had to come back to it the next day, kind of a thing. But then they ended up keeping that in the movie because it made them seem even actually more like hardened criminals.
Right. They're
Because
pissing
they're
off
just
Bryan
making fun of
Singer
the
just
cops.
like they'd piss off the cops. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was actually pretty fun. Also, I was looking up into this one because I thought this movie was fairly English. I thought this movie was fairly unanimously loved. This is one of the few movies that made Roger Ebert's hated list.
Really?
And I was going through his list just curious what else was on there. It's a lot of Adam Sandler and The Usual Suspects, because he's just like, halfway through I just stopped caring, and then by the end, when it turned out that they didn't care what they were doing either, I was like, well, at least I'm justified in not giving a crap.
Nice.
I don't know.
Oh, that's rough. Yeah. We sorry, lost the thought there. As far as you were talking about it being sort of divisible, I was a little bit the other way, like putting this on. Okay, so I'll just talk about this as my number 4.
Is
because
this your
we're
number 4?
already there. It is now.
Okay. Well, just one quick second. I just want to recap.
Sure.
Trash Can Joe's asking, what movies we've done so far? We've just done our top 5s. Jonathan's was The Life of David Gale, and mine was Usual Suspects, which we're going to continue talking about for Jonathan's number 4, apparently.
That's right. Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
We're pretty much done talking about it anyway, so I thought I might as well. I had said before I started that this list had no really hierarchy for me. This is one that I did have on my list. It is one that I've enjoyed. It's one that I think I owned on DVD back in the day, so it's one I've seen quite a number of times. And really, at its heart, this is a 90s heist movie, right? There's a lot of, every era has kind of a distinctive flavor of their heist movie.
Yeah.
And this feels like a 90s heist movie, right? For the most part. It's interesting because they're going to rob the scene with robbing the New York cops. They're going to rob the diamond jeweler. They're going to, set this up. And so that's really the interest of moving the plot along. And then there's kind of this bigger story arc with the big plot twist finish and stuff. But really, it's just, you've got these great actors, and even the cops. You've got good actors there.
Well,
Cameron, yeah. And so anyway, I enjoy it obviously more than you. I've enjoyed rewatching it more than you. But yeah, that was definitely in my top 5.
Now I've got his name all wrong. It's like Giancarlo Esposito or something, but that's not quite right. But it was really interesting seeing that he was in this too. And he's like, oh man, he is young in this.
Yes,
I'm used to seeing a much older version of him, but
yeah. And a lot of people are young. Like, this is Kevin Spacey's like kind of third really big movie. He was in all sorts of TV stuff and stuff in the 80s, but this is after Swimming with Sharks and it's going to escape me, but kind of early on for him. But him landing, like kind of anchoring this twist, I think really propelled him and on top of the other movies he was doing. I mean, Swimming with Sharks was still kind of an indie film, I think. So
yeah, I'm not familiar.
And then he can. You would enjoy it.
Fair enough.
Another list altogether. Yeah, but that's another whole thing.
Swimming with Sharks. I have all these pieces of paper that I just like write movies down while I talk, and then the next day I'll like clean up the desk and throw them all away and like never actually look anything up.
Never look at them again. Yeah,
it's a good system. It's working for me.
I was realizing, looking at IMDb, I could pretty much do like a 90s 90s list of Kevin Spacey. So
not problematic at all.
No. Yeah. We didn't know. We didn't know better.
I mean, if you can separate art from artist, he is a phenomenal artist.
Yeah.
All right, so moving on to my number 4, if that is your number 4, is another one that's kind of like mid-90s. This is another one that put an actor absolutely on the map with Ed Norton in 1996's Primal Fear. You familiar with this one?
This is one I wanted to rewatch this week, and I didn't get to it. I remember watching it and enjoying it. You go ahead. Sorry, not to interrupt.
No, it's all good. It's all good. This is one that we did rewatch. Amy and I rewatched this one a couple of days ago. But I've thought about it recently, and I was like, I'd kind of like to see that again. It's not really on anything, but I had a buddy who owns it, and I was like, all right, I'm going to come steal that. And I stole all the Mad Maxes from him, so I'm going to be going through those for another show later on down the road. And watching this one again, it is such a tour de force from Ed Norton, and Laura Linney and Richard Gere also do great jobs. There's a ton of great actors in this who went on to have very successful TV careers, which was interesting. Like Laura Linney was on Ozarks. You've got I had all these characters written down. You got John Maloney went on to Frasier. Andre Braugher went on to Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and seeing him young and in shape was interesting. Terry O'Quinn went on to Lost. Mara Tierney went on to News Radio and ER. Laura Linney went on to The Big C and Ozark. Like, just stacked cast, but for television.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was an interesting one. Anyways, so this is a story of a young man who kills an archbishop in a very religious town. Like, he's a very well-loved archbishop. Everybody knows him. And this took place, I don't want to say it's before people knew that there was something going on with the church and, molestation, but like before it was a major thing in the headlines. So when it comes out that he was molested, or he was actually recording them molesting each other, that was surprising enough in 1996. But you've got Ed Norton playing this very shy, mousy character, stuttering, can't quite get over himself, is terrified of everything, and he's supposed to be the number one murder suspect. Richard Gere is his lawyer, and he's trying to prove that he didn't do it. Well, it becomes apparent that this kid actually has multiple personalities, and one of the personalities is this man named Roy, who's very violent, very aggressive, and willingly admits to killing the bishop. Like, has no problem saying, yeah, I absolutely did that. So then Richard Gere has to try and change the the defense into one of insanity, which the judge is very against. Like, the judge's like, no, you have to plea that. You can't change that halfway through. That's crap. You can absolutely change a plea halfway through, but okay. There was a couple of lawsuits things in this where I was watching now as an adult. And I'm like, that's not accurate at all. Okay. Yeah. Had to kind of just roll with it. And in the end, you find out that he does, in fact, not have multiple personalities, but he's not the shy kid. He's actually the aggressive boy, and he just faked it the entire time.
Nice.
I thought you said you were familiar with this.
I've seen it back then. I saw it originally, like brand new, paid the $17.99 to rent it at Blockbuster back when it was $3.99.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
This is it's still a really interesting watch just for the actors in it, more so than for the story itself. Again, I found some of the lost scenes really frustrating. And ironically, are you familiar with the YouTube channel Legal Eagle?
No.
Okay. So, for one, I've got some links to send you after this because he's phenomenal and you'll like him. It's a real-world lawyer who goes over movie and TV show law.
Okay, yeah. I think I've seen clips of him. Yeah.
Okay. And so he just, ironically, within like a week, put out a video on Primal Fear. And I was like, well, that's convenient. So I was watching that. And he's doing the same thing I'm doing. He's like, that's not how the law works. And like, they allow a witness to give testimony that they are nowhere close to being an expert in. But then they like silence a witness that is actually an expert in something for giving expert testimony. You're just like, what is going on in this law room? Like, courtroom. This doesn't make any sense. Like, there's a couple of things that bother me on that sense, but I still really enjoyed the movie. The twist is phenomenal the first time you see it. Now that I've ruined it for you.
Totally.
Again, this is Ed Norton's very first performance. Okay. Which is incredible. And it really did put him on the map. Got him an acting, what is it called? The runner. Oh my goodness. A nomination for supporting actor. Yeah. Apparently they wanted Leonardo DiCaprio for this role, and he turned it down, which I think would have been an incredibly different movie. I like Leonardo DiCaprio a lot, but I think this was Ed Norton's performance to do.
Yeah.
And Matt Damon chased this one really hard, didn't get it, and so he went back to his apartment, disheveled, talked to Ben Affleck, and they decided, you know what? We should just make our own career-defining movie. And from the failing on this one, not getting this part, is actually what led to Good Will Hunting.
Nice.
which I think is absolutely incredible that they took that failure and turned it around and made it one of the biggest successes of their careers. So I'm very happy that Ed Norton was in this. I think he did a phenomenal job, but I'm also really happy that that led to Good Will Hunting.
Yeah, that's amazing. What a good story. Yeah.
All right, what is your number 3?
Number 3 is a movie I actually watched for this prep. I had not seen before. I've heard a lot about it over the years, and it kind of goes back to this same era. But this is Memento, um, and yeah, I know, whatever.
Memento?
Yeah,
Okay.
Memento. Um,
You've never seen Memento.
yeah, that was the lead. I thought you missed that. Okay.
Wow,
I've
wow, no, it
never
just took me
seen
so far.
Memento.
I've never seen Mementos,
Memento.
the Fresh Maker.
Memento.
Sorry,
Mentos.
we'll have to
Did I
edit all this
stumble?
out.
Did I stutter?
No, just
Um,
pronunciation was interesting to me. Anyways, sorry, go ahead.
I'd never seen it. I'd heard
Wow.
about it. I knew it existed. I knew people liked it. I knew it had a twist. And something about it, maybe I'd seen too many trailers. I hate long trailers. But I was like, okay, whatever. And so I watched a bunch of movies for this one. And this is one of the only ones that I hadn't seen before that I actually enjoyed. I found going to, looking for twist movies and then watching them because they're a twist movie and hoping the twist pans out was fell flat a lot. But this is one that it worked. Knowing it was a twist, there was still a good twist. I guess I don't have to worry about spoiling. But when you realize that he's in full control of what he's doing, not that he doesn't have the memory loss, but then he's actively going to make a choice, right? To do something wrong, right? Like it just feels so weird. Like that was such an interesting way to twist the story. So I was kind of on alert and I'm like, okay, this is going to be the twist. This is going to be the twist. And I still kind of felt like I got caught off guard. I'm like, oh, he's just evil. I get it. Okay. Yeah.
Fair
Very
enough.
interesting twist. Yeah.
So this is one that I considered, but I ended up putting more in the shocking category than the twist ending category, and maybe
Yeah.
that's on me. I love this movie. I saw this one back
Really? Okay.
in like high school or something. I actually tried to watch this with mom and dad, and I think dad just tapped out pretty fast. He's like, I don't understand what's happening here. For anybody who's not familiar, this movie, we talked about it with Cleaning Agent like a week ago or something. The movie takes place in 2 different time loans. So you've got a color version and a black and white version. And if you think about it, kind of like a horseshoe. So like they're both starting at the same place. Well, they're both starting and moving towards each other. So at the ending is where the past and the present are mixing.
Yeah.
But because the main character is a very unreliable narrator, he actually has some form of dementia where he can't make new memories, or he can't make them for very
brain
long.
injury. Yeah.
You're seeing flashes of the movie, and it's intertwined with the present and the past. In the present, he's on a phone call, and in the past, he's living through different things. But you're catching these little glimpses, and he usually starts off with him just being like, okay, what am I doing here?
Yeah.
And you don't know, as the audience, you don't know either. You're just like, wait, what is he doing here? And at one point, he's like running through a car light. He's like, oh, I'm chasing this guy. And the guy pulls a gun and he's like, nope, he's chasing me. And he's like, turn and run the other way.
Great, moment there.
Yeah, this is such a good movie. There's like 5 twists in this movie too, because you've got the fact that
because he's learning
remembering
so much.
about isn't real. Like that's something he made up for his own thing. You got the fact that his wife survived the attack. You got the fact that he killed his wife. You got the fact that you're right, he is kind of in control of what he's doing, at least in the sense that he's like, you know what? This brain injury sucks, but I'm going to use it to my advantage. I'm going to hunt you.
Exactly.
Is so interesting. I really enjoy this one.
guy.
I'm shocked you've not seen this one before. That kind of blows me away.
And it was just out there. Like I kind of knew all about it. I knew it was there. And I was really glad to watch it. I don't know how well it would hold up to rewatching it. They would have to be spaced pretty well, I think. And I did have a little
really
trouble
right away because you can kind of catch, like, okay, this part connects to over here and this part connects to over there, because it's like the most unlinear storytelling you can get.
Yeah. You're jumping backwards half step at a time. That's how I felt it was
Yeah.
kind of being told. And then you're getting little flashes of the other whole timeline, like you say, at the same time, usually interspersed somewhat. So there's these dream sequences and things like that that he's going back to, and you don't know really what's going on. Then all the puzzle pieces, I feel like I haven't rewatched it, but I felt like they fit together in a really satisfying way. Because that's another thing. Sometimes these twists they kind of lose themselves, and you're like, but there's so many plot holes. I don't know if you could twist this without just perforating the whole thing. Um, but this one felt really satisfying. Actually, the twist was like, oh, that's a good twist, and he's a bad guy. Yeah.
All right. Well, my number 3. My goodness, this is one of those ones where I didn't see it coming at all. But going back the second time, I'm a little bit blown away that I didn't see it coming at all. You know what I mean? Like they give you the hints you need,
Yeah.
and you
All the
totally
puzzle
miss them the
pieces
first
are
time
there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This one is the least successful one on my list, at least in the original box office run.
Okay.
My number 3 is Fight Club.
Okay.
Now, this is the 1999 movie, obviously, Brad Pitt, Ed Norton, there's actually multiple Ed Norton and Kevin Spacey that I considered for these lists. The fact that they are the same person is probably one of the more classic twist endings into a movie. And it's not quite the ending. Like, it happens like 20 minutes before the ending, but it's close enough. It definitely changes everything you've seen up until that point, to the point where you can definitely go back and watch this multiple times and catch on little things over and over again. And one of the websites I went to had like a breakdown of all the different, like, at this point something they say this and then this happens. At this point they say this and this happens. Like, he's beating himself up in his boss's office and he's like, at this moment I'm reminded of my first fight with Tyler Durden. Well, because that's what your first fight with Tyler Durden would have looked like, is just you punching yourself over and over again, right? Like, but you don't think of that at the time. You're just like, oh, he's reminding himself of that kind of pain or something.
Yeah.
There's even a point where Tyler Durden talks about, or Brad Pitt talks about, intersplicing adult pornography into kids movies, and you just get this little flash, and you're just like, did I see a dick? Like, what just happened there? And in the movie itself, it's got those scenes with Brad Pitt where he's just like, when you're looking for them, he's just like little flashes of Brad Pitt.
Totally flashes of Brad Pitt. Yeah.
I didn't see a single one of those the first time I watched this. Like, not a single one.
Okay. Yeah.
And then the second time I'm like, how did I
so...
miss this? Like, they're everywhere. Oh, I watched it with a buddy. Like, after I was like, you'll never guess what's coming. And he caught one of those right off the bat. He's like, why is there a Brad Pitt there?
Yeah.
Oh, are they the same guy? I'm like, all right, well done. Guess we can turn it off now.
Yeah.
But no, I really enjoyed this movie. It's not one I go back to all that much, despite the fact that I think the performances, the writing, everything about it is really, really well done.
Yeah.
It's just not one that I find terribly fun to watch, but I really do enjoy it.
Oh, I find this one to be a lot of fun to rewatch. Although I have to say I haven't rewatched it in probably 5 years or something. But I enjoy the Ed Norton kind of soliloquies at the beginning of the movie. He just goes on these monologues. He's talking about IKEA furniture. And I mean, a lot of the first half of the movie is just him talking in your ear, right? And I actually really enjoy that. I think a lot of that's really well written. And I enjoy the performances of both of them quite a bit. I've read and have not since rewatched, but there's this long thing out there on the internet which adds a twist to this movie, where not only is Brad Pitt the Ed Norton character, or a figment thereof or whatever, but the Marla, the Helen Botham Carter character, I messed that up too, didn't I?
A little bit,
yeah.
Helen Bonham Carter.
Yeah, whatever. I don't worry.
There's no F in there.
Yeah. Where she is also a figment of Ed Norton's character herself. There's no separate female character there.
Okay.
And that is extremely well researched, and I feel like I'd have to kind of reread it and watch it again. But they're talking about room numbers and things like that, and there's a lot of clues that seem to reinforce that, if it's all fact check, if it's all
Sure.
real. So I want to kind of go back to that. It was like probably a 30 or 40-page document. Like it's like,
Wow.
yeah,
Okay.
it's well researched, and so that adds another whole layer that I want to go back to and experience that a bit. But
One of the things I was when I was doing research is sorry, I lost my place here. One of the things I was looking at when I was researching this is that Ed Norton and Helena Bonham Carter actually wanted to go to a couple of like self-help sessions for different people for different reasons, but they kept like going back to like, with the tone of this movie that just feels wrong, like I don't think we can quite do it, but like just for research purposes they were like so close, and they're just like, I really want to know what these things are like, but also that feels almost mean-spirited considering the tone of the movie.
You're a tourist. Yeah.
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 All right, what's your number 2, Jonathan?
My number 2 is Psycho. Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho. This is one, of course, it's been around for longer than I've been alive, but this is one I kind of hunted down and watched on my own. I was not big on horror movies. Didn't really, in my mind at that point, I would have classified this as a horror movie. And so watched it on my own somewhere in my teen years sometime, knowing it was kind of a classic, but not really knowing much else about it. And really enjoyed it. And this is one I've owned on VHS, I've owned on DVD, and gone back to a number of times. And the twist is significant, but I feel like there's. I mean, I can't say anything that hasn't been said about Psycho.
Don't spoil the 67-year-old movie.
There's a whole thing online that this movie and Alfred Hitchcock marketing this movie pushed for no late admittance into the theater because of the plot twists and not wanting people to miss any of the ride. I don't know how accurate that is, but there's a lot of that out there talking about that. And
he also
so
had a
there's
big campaign for trying to convince people not to tell their friends about the twist.
yeah,
Like, let everybody just experience it. Which, I
For
mean, good luck
themselves.
nowadays. Nowadays, things are spoiled 6 months before they come out.
Right. But yeah, that's very interesting. There's kind of two twists in this movie. A minor one where you're following this character for an hour,
Yeah.
and then they're dead, and the movie's not over, and you're like, well, that's what's happening now. Who
Yeah.
do I latch onto, right?
Well, she was a pretty big star at the time, too. Like, she wasn't
Yeah,
like a
so that
nobody.
was
Like, she's the reason you're going to watch this movie. And like, oh, like,
whose movie is it now?
yeah.
So that was really interesting. And then, of course, the big final twist. You're thinking there's this evil mother just browbeating this poor kid, and then of course, the big reveal when they find her in the basement. And so that's huge. Also, the just in the cinematography, we were talking about those flashes in Fight Club. There's this melting face scene and at first I thought it was kind of subtle, but it gets pretty obvious on the rewatch. But where you're seeing, the Bates character, Norman Bates, Anthony, and he's doing a lot of acting with his eyes, right? But there's just that final shot, and they fade in a skull over the face. And like I said, it's pretty obvious on rewatch, but it starts off very subtle, and then there's for the time some photography going on there as well. So just a brilliant idea for a shot. Yeah.
So this is one that you owned on VHS. So I know that I watched this a lot in high school-ish.
Okay.
And I really, really enjoyed it at the time. I still really enjoy this one, don't get me wrong. But that was the only Hitchcock I'd ever seen at that point. So it was like, oh my gosh, I really like Hitchcock. And now that I've explored more Hitchcock, I'm like, Psycho's great. but I really like these other ones just a little bit more.
Yeah.
The twist in this one is good. Is great. Probably I sincerely thought it was one of the first twist endings, but maybe one of the first big twist endings. But the problem is this one was actually spoiled for me by a camp counselor back like when I was like 10. Like I don't think I even knew the name of the movie at the time, and he was like talking us through a couple of different movies that we were probably way too young to actually be able to watch, like The Good Son and a couple other ones. And he's
Nice.
like, okay, all right, everybody's going to bed. All right, let's talk through this movie. All right, this is the story of Norman Bates and his hotel. And we're just like, oh, yeah. So
I don't
while
know
this
if
is a
this
good
is,
one,
I'm more offended by the bad camp counseling or the bad movie spoiling. They're both so bad.
yeah, he wasn't great. So this is on my
Oh,
honorable mentions list. Not because
okay.
it's not a great movie, not because it's not a great twist, but because, like you said, like when you know it's coming, it's just not the same
Yeah.
thing. And for this one, I mean, it's again, it's from the 1960s or something. Like everybody knows what the twist is to this one,
Yeah.
but I can still appreciate it. But it doesn't like it doesn't hit the same way when you know it before you even start the movie.
Yeah. And I feel like Alfred Hitchcock really liked exploring the twist ending, messing with the audience, keeping the audience in suspense, not knowing what's going to happen next, playing with the story arc. So I was alluding to earlier watching like Alfred Hitchcock Presents. There was also for like 50 years there's been this Alfred Hitchcock magazine which just publishes short stories. And a lot of that whole genre does kind of revolve around kind of twist endings, keeping you guessing, surprising you. And so this is something he's done a lot. And it was a little bit difficult. Like, do I rewatch 400 Alfred Hitchcock movies? But yeah. So anyway, this was one I didn't have to rewatch, so that was part of the reason it made my list. Also because I watched it relatively young, I hadn't had it spoiled for me, and so it was kind of like one of my first forays into kind of choosing a grown-up movie, watching it on my own,
Yeah.
and that sort of thing. And yeah, really enjoyed it, and it's one I've enjoyed going back to. But yeah, you could say a lot about. You could probably do 5 all Hitchcock twist endings.
Oh yeah.
But I really like this one, and probably just didn't have my guard up for it in the
Yeah.
same way as a lot of other movies later on. So
All right, Jesse wrote us a bit of a novel here, but it's actually a legit post, so I want to read that out loud. The Psycho late admit thing is true. Up until the mid 60s, movie theaters played movies constantly all day, A and B pictures. A main studio pick, Paramount, Columbia, MGM, etc., as the A, and then a B, cheap or indie studio. Psycho was definitely a leader in changing the theater system into block time movie starts, and other directors like William Castle and his shock movies embraced it also, and slowly over the 60s it changed. But Psycho is definitely a leading factor in the changing of how movie theaters moved into what we now know for the time scheduling blocks. See,
good.
Jesse, when you actually post real information, it's interesting. As opposed to the 9 other things you posted that I completely ignored. All right. You good with that?
I'm good with that.
All right. Are we on number 2s already? Is that your Psycho?
I think that's
2?
time for an honorable mention or so.
Well, let me do my number 2 if that's where we're at.
Yeah.
We'll go from there. So my number 2, you've already mentioned in a negative light. So I'm super curious how this is going to go.
I am ready for this. If that's the one,
it certainly is. You're checking around if there's kids so you can swear.
There are definitely kids.
All right, we're actually on ads for a second, so I'm going to just give it a second. Frozen. You know what? Somebody posted earlier that like I didn't see the twist coming in Frozen. You're 100% right. I didn't see that twist coming in Frozen. It doesn't make my list, but I didn't see it coming.
Yeah,
the first time. The 900th time I saw it coming. That's for darn sure.
Oh my word!
Freaking 3 daughters. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I think we're back from ads at the moment. So my number 2 is one that we've already discussed. You're not a fan of. I really like this one, and that is Christopher Nolan's The Prestige. Now,
Okay.
admittedly, the twist isn't as strong in this one as in some other movies, but I think the movie itself is so incredibly strong around it. It's so rewatchable. It's really, really fun that I can still justify putting this one higher up on the list. Now, that being said, I didn't see the twist coming in this one, but I also wasn't anticipating there being a twist. I was just watching a movie about two dueling magicians in a year where there was like 3 movies about dueling magicians. So between the illusionist and scrape or scope or something, and then this one was far and away the best one of the 3. I think the acting in it is phenomenal. I love Christopher Nolan. This is maybe one of my favorite Christopher Nolan movies. Not my favorite, but really far up there. I'm so curious what you're so against in this movie that you like. You sound bored. You sound like you're just totally against it. Like what about this movie just turns you right off?
I really enjoy, like, I think it's a well-made movie. I really enjoyed the cinematography. I really enjoyed the directing. I love both of these actors. I thought they both did a good job. And it sucked.
You gotta give me more than that, bud.
I cracked the first twist at like the 14-minute mark. He says it's a trick only I can do, and I'm like, he's got a twin brother, and so
Maybe you're saying that because
on,
we both have twins, so we're just more used to it. Like
maybe
lots of twins in this family.
it's just the emphasis in the line. I was like, that was a really odd line. It was odd the way he said it, the way the wording came out. It just felt like that was way too big a red herring, and not a red herring as it turned out. And then the whole there's a second twist in this, which I guess we're spoiling. So I'm always like careful.
The spoiler list is going, but just
100 of dead bodies in the basement in water tanks. Yeah, that we saw that coming, right? Like, and that kind of took.
I don't think. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Anyway, so kind of both of those were spoiled. The whole thing with his wife is like, do you mean it today? I'm like, oh my word, spoon feed it to us. I just felt like it was really heavy-handed, and yeah, I don't enjoy this one. This is really early Christopher Nolan, by the way. It's like, is this his? No, that's not right.
No, this is like
2006. No, I think I was thinking.
This is after the first Batman movie. Like this is pretty far in.
No, that was something else that I was looking at for my list. But yeah, no, it just nothing worked. And there is like zero fun to be had in this movie. A magic movie with 2 amazing stars and amazing director that can't have any fun with magic. Like, it's so painful. And
I don't know that we're watching the same movie.
I'm pretty sure we did. You should maybe tell me something you liked about it at this rate. The other thing I noticed with this movie is, well, exactly that. Like, there's just, you're not really enjoying the magic, and it doesn't have that. There's a few times where you've got that danger flavor, I guess, that kind of keeps it interesting. But it's kind of dark, ugly magic, right? They're killing birds and girls and men, and so it just doesn't really have a kind of enjoyable flavor, right?
I think that's kind of the point, is that it is more of an obsession than it is
Totally.
about the joy of it. It is
Yeah.
their quest to one up each other and to prove that they are the better magician, more so than it is like The Greatest Showman. Although that's also kind of the same thing that I said out loud. So never mind. That's a bad example. It's not about the enjoyment or the crowd. It is about being the better person. It is about being the better man, like one upping the other person.
Yeah.
And they can never let it go. And if they could just go on and enjoy their lives. But everything that goes wrong between the two of them is because they can't let this feud go, and it ends up ruining both of their lives to some extent. I mean, more so Christian Bale than Hugh Jackman, but
one of the Christian Bales anyway.
Yeah.
One of them seems like he gets off okay.
Now, I saw this one not in theaters, but maybe it was like fresh on DVD. I didn't see that twist coming at all, but it also wasn't presented to me as a twist-ending movie. So this is one of the ones we were talking about when we first made the list, where like I was just watching a movie about these two feuding magicians. There was nothing in it that inherently said, "Oh, there's something coming you're not going to see."
Right.
Like the other thing is, none of the movies on my list are going to be like whodunits, because like of course there's a twist ending at the end, but at the same time you're trying to figure it out the entire time. I wasn't trying to figure anything out with this. I was just watching a great movie, great cast, great director, like really, really well shot. I found it really interesting, the back and forth, the push and pull between them, and the obsession, and like trying to figure out who was going to come out on top. I never even considered the twist is underlying the whole thing. So for me, that came out of left field, and that's why I really enjoyed it. It's the first time, multiple viewings, I just enjoyed the film. But
Okay, very good. Yeah, I lost a train of thought there somewhere.
no, that's fair.
Yeah.
And I mean, we said before we even started this list, like if you are watching a movie for a twist ending and you see it coming ahead of time or it's spoiled for you, that can really just alter your enjoyment of the movie entirely. Not just the first time, but just forever.
Yeah.
So I get it. It sucks for you that it got ruined for you, but I get it.
Yeah, and really, it was only ruined by knowing it was a twist ending. It showed up on a bunch of these lists as these are good twist movies, and I was kind of looking at those lists. I don't even like to look at them because of that, but I was kind of looking at those just to make sure I hadn't missed anything obvious, or I'd be like, oh yeah, that movie. I wouldn't have thought of that, but that's a great movie for this list, that kind of thing. I got some honorable mentions. I was like, oh yeah, those are kind of, but nothing that really made the list.
I looked at a list and it had me laughing because it's like, oh, the top 100 movies. I'm like, okay, cool. This is gonna be a good list because I've got like 9. So like, let's see what else is on there. And almost every one was like, well, not a traditional twist ending to the movie. It was really interesting that the main character died at the end. You're like, that's not a twist at all. And like number 1 was Citizen Kane, and I'm just like,
yeah, I kept seeing Citizen Kane on lists. I'm like, well, is that a twist?
Like the whole point of the movie is you're trying to figure this out, and then you finally figure it out. Like it's not shocking. I don't know, maybe it was in 1939, but like, okay, yeah, exactly. Like it's a pretty straight line. Just because the detectives don't figure it out doesn't make it a twist.
Yeah,
but
yeah, exactly.
Sure.
Yeah.
The amount of movies where like it started off like preface
at the end. Yeah.
Yeah. The amount of movies that preface like straight up like, well, this isn't really a twist movie, but we like it anyways. You're like, what is this list? There was like 9 twists on it too. It's like, okay,
exactly.
Maybe there's not that many twist endings in movies as we thought.
It's hard to get a really good twist that isn't just a shock, unravel a mystery, tell a good story, but a genuine like, holy crap, I did not see that coming. I want to press stop, rewind, play.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm from an era. Yeah.
Yeah.
Realizing that doesn't resonate with the kids. Yeah.
Well, I don't know. There's many kids watching this. Let's be honest.
That's fair.
The average age of here is like
some points. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So before we get to our number ones, do you want to go over some of your honorable mentions?
Yeah, let's do some honorable mentions. I will say I did like the tragic flavor of your Prestige. The Prestige there. And like I said, there's I mean, it was a well-made movie, but it just it was a little joyless. Yeah, it didn't do nothing for me.
Fair enough.
Very good.
I'm just happy that we don't have as much crossover as I thought we were going to have, to be perfectly honest.
I'm very surprised. A couple of honorable mentions, just for fun. Of course, The Sixth Sense, but like you say, pretty much all M. Night Shyamalan movies could go on there. It was a lot of fun when I first saw it. It was his first movie that I saw. I don't think I saw this in the theater, but I think I saw it right away on video. It was certainly the year it came out.
Yeah.
Still mid buzz, whatever. And I thought that was a really enjoyable twist. There was a few clues, kind of breadcrumbs along the way, so I remember like picking at the twist, but not quite unraveling it completely. Although it's kind of a one-step twist, so I don't know what that looks like. Just for fun, I was trying to think outside the kind of typical thriller genre for twist endings. I don't think these would necessarily would make the list, but La La Land was kind of an ending you didn't see coming. But I like it more as a tragic ending than a twist ending, I wouldn't say. I know I always get into trouble with my genre stuff. So I Married an Axe Murderer was a fun example of this, kind of a play on the twist ending.
I only remember Head Move now. I don't remember that movie at all.
This is one I've maybe enjoyed a little bit more than you. That's probably
Yeah.
my favorite Michael Myers movie. I'm
Wow.
thinking as I say that out loud, at least of his comedies back from the 90s era, at least. It is a different flavor than like the oh, brother,
Austin Powers.
Austin Powers, thank you, or the Wayne's World movies.
Sure.
And it's fun. And you kind of think you know what's going on, and then there is kind of a silly little twist at the end. Again with the twins, I guess. But yeah, there we go. Uh, so anyway, I don't have a ton for honorable mentions because I ended up picking a lot of movies apart. As I looked back at them, it was like, well, that was more shocking. A lot of
Yeah.
these lists talk about Seven. A lot of these lists talk about movies I hadn't seen. A lot of these movies talk about sci-fi movies, and oftentimes it's this time travel element. But if you read any sci-fi short stories from like the 50s, then there's always that time travel element, like this whole idea that leaving Earth, you're on this separate timeline, and so
Yeah.
if you come back to Earth after traveling at light speed, like crazy shit's gonna happen. Like that whole idea has been kind of beaten to death in the fiction world, and then every movie feels like they just discovered it, and you're like, ooh. And so there's a bunch of movies that get mentioned in that vein, but I'm like, yeah, that's barely a twist. Like that's understanding, you know, Einstein and stuff. So
Yeah. Yeah.
um, anyway, so the more pet peeves, I guess, than honorable mentions.
Sounds good.
Yeah, yeah.
Have you ever seen The Others, or do you even know what that is?
That was one I have seen. It kept coming up on lists that I was looking at, and I'm like, I should maybe rewatch that. And then I rewatched I watched Prestige for the first time instead, and that was probably part of my frustration with the Prestige. Like, I should have watched the others.
I'm going to tell you, you made the right call.
Okay,
I
fair
watched
enough.
The Others way back when, was
Yep.
not expecting a twist. For anybody who doesn't know, it's
We might
Nicole
have watched
Kidman.
it together. It's back that far
It's
for me.
possible, but I
Yeah,
don't. I couldn't tell you who I watched it with.
yeah.
The Others is a very classic ghost story starring Nicole Kidman. She's got a couple of kids. She lives in a very Victorian manor, and something is just off, and you're not really sure what's going on. They think the house might be haunted, but you never really see anything. And it's this really really interesting film about them, and you get to the end, and you actually find out they were the ghosts the entire time. And I freaking loved that twist. And I was like, this is such a good twist ending. Like, this is amazing. And then I watched it with Amy and the kids like a month ago. And it was just like, this movie's really boring when you know what's coming. Like,
Oh
it was just
yeah.
one of those, like, okay. Like, the twist is interesting. Everything else about it is just like, okay.
You're
And there's
just
some
waiting
stuff
for
that happens
nothing
in
to
it.
happen.
Yeah. And like some of the stuff
Yeah.
that does happen, you're just like, this is so ridiculous. How did I not know something was going to be
Right. Yeah.
like when her husband comes back from the war and he's just rambling on and he disappears into the fog and nobody decides to go after him and you're just like, okay.
Yeah.
Anyways, but I really really liked it the first time. I thought if you don't know the twist when you're watching it, it was really good the first time. It's just one I couldn't revisit, so I couldn't put it on this list.
Yeah.
Another one that I wasn't entirely sure was a twist ending, but I really enjoyed and want to talk about briefly at least is is it Michael Douglas's The
The
Game?
Game?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was in my honorable mentions. Yeah.
I really liked this one, and this one you can absolutely go back and rewatch. I'm just not 100% sure that it's actually a twist because you kind of know something is up the entire time. You're
Right.
just not 100% sure what you do know. It's more of a you don't know who you trust
Yeah.
than it
It's a
is
bit of
an
a
actual
shell
shock.
game more than a twist,
Yeah,
right?
great way to put it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great way to put it.
Yeah. My kids
Um,
wanted to show me for this list On the Line, which is actually very similar to The Game. It's a Mel Gibson movie that came out very recently, maybe direct to Netflix ish, maybe during COVID, maybe 2021, even something like that. And it was enjoyable. I enjoyed that one. They'd really enjoyed it. But it made me think of the game quite a bit, actually. And I debated on does that fit on the list here? And I'm like, exactly the question you're asking about the twist being an actual twist. But yeah, it
yeah.
has very similar flavors, and that was for me, it was kind of a lighter callback to the game a little bit. Not that it's
Yeah.
super light, but whatever.
And then I've got three on the list that are really interesting twist endings, but because they came out so far before our time, I knew
It
them
kind of
before
got,
I saw the movie. So
yeah, yeah,
I've got Psycho on the list for that. I've got The Empire Strikes Back on that list, and I've got Planet of the Apes on that list.
okay,
Because if you didn't know Planet of the Apes, that was probably a great twist.
yeah,
But it has been spoiled in like Simpsons and Family Guy and like every movie ever. Like there's no way you don't know that ending. You
yeah.
know what I mean?
I
Like it's just
was,
like
yeah. Sorry, not to interrupt.
no, that's all I got. Like it's just
Yeah,
those three movies have great twists and they're great movies, but because you knew what they were going into it, it's hard to put them on this list.
yeah. See, I was older than you and younger when I first saw The Empire Strikes Back.
Okay.
Because I'm older than you, I was younger when I watched The Empire Strikes Back for the first time, and I really debated on putting that on the list. I'm like that's kind of checks all the boxes.
Yeah.
And it did show up on some other people's lists, and I'm like, that was like earth shattering, right? Like Darth Vader was living in all the shadows in my house when I saw that movie. He was the reason I was afraid of the dark. I could hear him breathing in my closet, you know. And then that he's Luke's dad, the hero of the universe. I was so betrayed. What does this even mean? Which we had to wait 3 more years to find out. Like it was just yeah, it was such a good twist. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm still kind of the mind like the first three original trilogy is really all the Star Wars the universe needed. And so this really does make
Yeah.
that trilogy, like it really is a turning point for the whole thing. So um yeah, anyway, I really enjoyed that twist. I agree with you, that could have been one on the list as well.
Yeah. The last one I want to talk about is the one that I would mention is I like more than my number 5 or my number 4, but the twist is
Meh.
it's not even that it's meh, it's that it okay, so here's what I'm gonna say. I've seen this movie twice. I thought it was a better twist ending the second time I watched it than the first time I watched it. If that
Interesting.
makes any sense. So watching it a second time, you realize how much it actually does play into the entirety of the movie. Whereas the first time you watch it, you're just enjoying the movie and you're like, oh, that was weird.
Are you talking about your number one right now?
No. Just my last honorable mention.
Okay.
Now I'm nervous to say it because
I'm like on the edge of my seat here.
if you've not seen this one, I'm going to implore you go and see it. But now that you know there's a twist, I don't want to be like, ugh.
Yeah.
My last honorable mention is Arrival. This one
I've
came out
seen
a couple
Arrival.
years ago.
Yeah.
Okay, have you seen it twice?
I haven't seen it twice.
Okay, did you like it?
One of my really good friends out here really wanted me to watch this movie, and we watched it together. I enjoyed it. I felt like what I just said about sci-fi. This is the one of the movies I was thinking of, you know.
Okay.
But and again, when you've seen these movies, is like 5 years ago now. I really did enjoy it. I thought it was the whole story is fairly well done. It does keep you guessing. Just kind of what's going to happen next is very interesting in this movie. Yeah. Anyway, so sorry, you talk more.
So the first time I saw this was, I think, when it first came out on VHS. I wish I'd seen this one in theaters. I really enjoy this one. It's the story of aliens coming to Earth for the first time, and you've got people trying to decipher what they are saying and talk to them. They are not alienoids in any way that we're used to seeing in like Star Wars or Star Trek, where it's just like a person with makeup on. They're far more alien. They are almost, they're not octopuses because I think they've got 7, but I can't remember what they call them.
Jellyfishish sort of.
Yeah. And they speak with like ink, and they don't write in the way that we do. It's just kind of like it appears entirely in 1 second. And so they bring in a couple of people to decipher what it is they're saying. And like I've watched the Neil deGrasse Tyson kind of rip this apart, be like, those are not the scientists you'd bring in this situation, but whatever. Let's just go with the movie anyways. And you've got, I think there's like 17 of these pods all around Earth, and like every different government is kind of trying to figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
And they're racing the clock because like China and Russia want to like nuke them and kill them. and like everybody else is kind of like, well, let's talk to these things first because they haven't shown any aggression to us whatsoever, and why piss off a clearly technologically superior race? So so you get the story of Jeremy Renner and Amy Adams trying to communicate with these aliens. And throughout it, you're seeing these flashbacks that she's having of um, her daughter, who ends up passing away from cancer at a young age, and the painful memories that she's going through. And she's kind of a reclusive person, so you kind of just accept that, you know, she lived through this terrible pain, and that that changed her, and that's why she's kind of reclusive, lives in the middle of nowhere, stuff like that. You go through this entire movie, and what it turns out to be is that these aliens, there's a throwaway line in the movie that turns out to be kind of the pivotal point of the movie, which is how you determine language actually changes the way you think. So like, as English speakers, our brains actually work differently than like German speakers or Russian speakers or stuff like that. This is a theory by some scientists. This isn't like 100% fact. So as they're learning the alien language, which takes place entirely at the same time, there's no beginning or end to it. It's changing the way their brains work so that they are actually perceiving time entirely at one time. So they're changing how they can interact with time, which is really messed up, but I like science fiction, and it doesn't break its own rules, so I'm okay with it.
Yep.
So the first time you're just watching this movie and you're just enjoying it as you go along. And the second time I was watching it, I was actually cluing in, like, this, like, I mean, they do explain it at the end, but while you're actually watching it, like, realizing all these cutscenes of her interacting with her daughter haven't happened yet. And so all the moments where she's like got this weird look on her face that you're assuming is grief or sadness, it's actually her just trying to comprehend what she's got memories of, because she starts getting these memories before she even interacts with the aliens. Like, it starts being, I think it starts getting really confusing timeline wise. And I really, really enjoyed it. Even the second time, I really did enjoy this story quite a bit. The ending where she averts the attacking the aliens by talking to the Chinese prime minister or whatever, Chinese leader, like 10 years down the road.
Yes.
But that gets him to stop him from doing the attack now. Like, it's just a really, really cool concept. And I really, really enjoyed it. It doesn't make my list again because the twist wasn't as strong, but the movie itself, I could see myself revisiting long before I'll revisit Usual Suspects again.
Right.
Or Primal Fear for that matter.
Yeah.
And then I'm super curious. I was gonna mention something here. So someone, I think it's been Trash Can Joe this whole time, has kept saying, "What's in the box?" I really, really like 7. I really do. It's not a twist ending for me. I would say it's a shocking ending for sure.
Yeah.
But it doesn't change the overall tone of the movie. So it didn't make my list, despite the fact that I really like it.
Yeah.
Anyways, I just wanted to address that quickly. Jonathan, drum roll, unless you got another honorable mention.
No, I think that's
all right.
It for me.
Drum roll, please. Jonathan, what is your number 1?
Unfortunately, we've already discussed it, so it's spoiled, but it's Fight Club is my number 1 twist movie. I really enjoy this one. It's one that I saw right away when it came out on video. Actually, friends had watched it, and just as I arrived at their place, they'd finished it like half an hour before or something. Like, you gotta watch this movie, and they just put it back on, and then we watched it again for them. And so I was kind of teed up, and I still really enjoyed the ride. Every bit of this movie is really good. It's good on rewatch. It's very enjoyable. The dialogue, the characters are it's that effortlessly cool Brad Pitt that makes you nauseous. And Edward Norton's like that narration. I just really enjoy the whole first half of the movie where he's just kind of talking, and he's kind of got this step back, looking at the world sort of thing, which sets up a lot of the finale of the movie. But he's kind of talking about our culture and all of these things, and I think a lot of that kind of resonates for me. I think a lot of it's actually fairly well articulated, and so yeah, I enjoy a lot about this movie. Yeah, and yeah, I don't know what it's it's a movie that does have a lot of fun too, right? It's got these.
Depends on your definition of fun, I
I
think.
suppose so. I don't enjoy the fight scenes. I don't watch. I don't watch a ton of action. I don't watch MMA. I don't want to see a guy get punched in the face while his head's on the ground. That just does some things to the little hairs on the back of my neck.
Yeah.
But the chatter I find in this movie to be a lot really enjoyable. So
In fairness, Faust, we are breaking the first 2 rules of Fight Club, just to be clear. Yeah, no, there's a ton of quotable lines in this movie that I'm never
yeah,
smart enough to picture up at the exact time. I wish I could do that. This is I am Jack's low self-esteem more often. I don't
yeah,
usually think of it in time for it to be relevant, but it's a
it
great
could
thing.
work a lot. Yeah,
Right? Like there's so
yeah.
many situations.
What kind of dining set defines me? Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. This is one of the ones where, I mean, just to pull out random facts just to be talking about it again.
Mhm.
The author, whose name I'm gonna mess up because it's
Yes,
not English,
it's Polish, I think. Something. This
has
is one
straight
I've
up said,
actually.
like,
Go ahead.
you've read the book?
No, I sought out the book. I think I have it in my Amazon cart right now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Along with 900 other books you'll never
yeah,
read.
that's accurate. Yeah,
Yes.
actually, your cart maxes out at 600 items.
Oh, good to know. I've gotten to
That's how you
3.
know.
I don't know. Why do you know that?
If you have things in your cart, Amazon has to tell you when the price changes. So I throw a ton of stuff in there and I just wait for it to go up and down, particularly down. Yeah. Anyway,
That's actually kind of smart.
no,
Okay.
it is. Yeah.
So you always hear like, oh, the book was better. The book was better. The author himself has straight up said the movie version is better. Like
Okay.
he appreciates that they added a lot to the story and it actually is really well done. So
Interesting. So $5.99 in my cart then.
there you go.
Yeah. Thanks. You saved me $7 plus not free
I
shipping.
don't know. He was quite saying it's not worth reading at all.
I'm
I'm
sure
not,
he wouldn't. Yeah.
yeah,
Look who's telling me that. Yeah.
yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Anything else to add, or we can?
I don't know. We talked about this a fair bit, but
Fair enough.
I think for me, this might have been my first, and I'm going to say his name wrong, but it doesn't mean I don't love him. But David Fincher? Yes. I should have like a pronunciation guide just over my computer for English.
Yeah, it couldn't hurt. Couldn't.
Yeah,
hurt.
I'd have to double check, but I'm pretty sure this is my first experience with him, and I really enjoy a lot of his stuff. So
Yeah, no, he's great. All right, so my number 1, again, you did mention it. I'm shocked we made it this far and we haven't talked about it a whole lot more than that. This is the number 1 movie that comes to mind when I think of a twist ending for
Mrs. Doubtfire.
many reasons. Well, again, you don't really see it coming, but no, like when I think of a twist ending, this is the number 1 that comes to mind because even though like I think I yeah, if I remember correctly, I walked into this one pretty blind, as a lot of people did. My number 1 is Sixth Sense. This is M. Night Shyamalan's first movie that was like a really, really big hit.
Yeah.
I saw this with our cousin Megan one summer.
Okay.
And I feel like she was just like, you have to come see this movie. And I was like, okay. And we went to the theater and watched it.
Okay.
I can't remember. We also watched Blair Witch, and I can't remember if we watched them in the same day or just in the same trip, like the same visit.
Oh, okay.
But either way, I came home to mom and dad and was like, I saw Blair Witch and this. And they're just like, you're never going to go visit Megan again.
How old would you have been when this came out? You had to be 18.
Well, I mean, it's 99, so it would have been like 17.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So, like, I wasn't like young, but it's mom and dad. So, like, they
Yeah,
weren't
I
exactly on
understand.
board with a lot of things.
The Blair Witch, there's at least
We'll get to that. Let me talk
will.
about the number 1, and we can talk about that off screen if we have to.
I also saw that in the theater.
So this one came out in the summer of '99, and I was reading up something on it where it was such a sleeper hit that Entertainment Weekly did a top 134 films of the summer and didn't even mention it. And it ended up being the second biggest blockbuster, or second biggest grossing movie of the year, only behind Star Wars Phantom Menace.
Wow.
So to go from a $40 million budget to a $672 million return in 1999
That's insane.
is insane. And like accredited well to like the fact that a lot of people watched it and were like turned around, went and watched it again, just to like,
Yeah.
did I actually get that right? I don't think we need to tell people what the twist is in this movie. It's been talked to death, right? Like this
Yeah.
movie's been out for 25 years. Everybody knows it. This
Yeah.
has simultaneously launched and ruined M. Night Shyamalan's career because it put him on the map, but it also put him on the map for having a twist. So every time you go to a movie, you're just like, what's the twist in this one? And like
Mhm.
within 5 minutes, you're like, oh, it's probably this. Like I can remember seeing The Village with an X, and
Okay.
probably in the first 10 minutes, if not before we even got into the theater, I was like, oh, I bet it takes place in modern time, and they're all just faking it. Yep, that's exactly what's happening. And it's just like, it's not fun when you know it. You're just waiting for them
Right.
to tell you what you already know, right? So the only time M. Night Shyamalan has surprised me other than this one is actually in Split, because it was so far down his career that I was like, okay, he's gotten away from it. There's no twist to this one. It's just going to be a story of
Doing
like,
something else, I guess.
yeah, like the
Yeah.
point isn't that it's a twist. The point is that you're seeing Professor Xavier,
Ish.
whatever his name is, just like
Yep.
have like 48 different roles. Somebody in chat's going to burn me on that one for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, and I was just fully on board with that. And then when you find out what that movie's really about, you're like, oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyways, we're not talking about that. We're talking about Sixth Sense. The first time I watched this one has, I want to say it's a horror movie because it clearly is, but shy of a couple of jump scares and a couple of just like creepy scenes. It's really just
Creepy
this
scenes.
interesting movie. Bruce Willis, I want to say has a great performance, but does a whole lot with a little is what I'm actually going to say, because like he doesn't have a whole lot to do in this other than just kind of like be there and like kind of react to things. Haley Joel Osment, on the other hand, steals this movie, and it's unfortunate that we never really see him live up to this potential ever again. Like he's done other movies, but nothing to this caliber, nothing that like pushed him as an actor quite as much as this did. Interestingly enough, Michael Cera auditioned for that role, and I cannot imagine this movie with Michael Cera in that role. That just kind of blows my mind. We were talking about Arrested Development earlier, and my brain is just like,
I could not see that.
I can't picture that at all.
No.
But
I think this was well casted. I think.
Oh yeah, yeah, he did a really good job.
Yeah.
And even going back, you know, like I really like Toni Collette now, but I didn't know who she was at the time. So going back, like we watched this with the twins not that long ago, which is probably terrible parenting on my part. And like, oh, that's her. Like I know her now. Like I hadn't seen this since it was in the theaters. Like that was my second time seeing it ever. And I was like, this is it really does hold up to rewatches, even when you know the twist. And that's a sign of, I think, of a really good twist ending, is when you can know the twist, still enjoy it, actually get more out of it the second time.
Yeah.
That was really, really fun. And I this movie's been broken down to death about like the color red and everything that's going on in it. I don't care. It's still a really, really fun ride. It's got just enough horror to be to get your blood going.
You're literally like on the edge of your seat. Yeah.
Right. But it's not like a gore fest.
No.
Like I watched it with my kids, and like, yeah, there's blood, but
it's
there's
like
nothing
sprinkles of. I think for me the most scary scene, there's a scene where they're in the school after a play or something, and all of a sudden there's just like bodies hanging in the hallway or something.
Yeah, they used to execute people in the gym. How do you know that? And they're just staring at
face
them.
with it. Yeah,
they're staring at them, which is the creepiest part.
So
like they're just
creepy. I
been
think
hanging
that's the
there for
scene in the movie.
generations.
Oh, yeah.
I literally have chills right now. I'm not even gonna lie, just talking about that, because I'm a wuss at the end of the day.
I need that level of horror is like my limit, my upper limit. I like it just kind of sprinkled into a good story. So the others was right in the neighborhood. Sixth Sense, I'm quite a wuss as far as that goes too. I find movies, it's a really visual memory, right? And especially movies I watched as a kid. Thank you, Dark Crystal.
This movie actually dethroned Jaws as the highest grossing horror movie. So Jaws held the title from 1977 until 1999 with 476 million. This one overpassed it. I don't have it written down somehow. Must have it somewhere. Oh, there we go. 672 million.
You just said six something, yeah.
Yeah, and then held that record until 2017 when It came out and took it over with 701 million.
I thought you were gonna say
No,
one of the Saw movies. Yeah,
no, Sauce did okay, but not hundreds of
nothing like
millions of
that.
dollars. Okay.
Okay,
Um, Also, one of only 4 horror movies ever to be nominated for a Best Picture movie.
okay,
Wow. English.
yeah,
One of the only horror movies to be nominated for Best Picture.
okay,
Along with Jaws, Exorcist, and Silence of the Lambs. And Silence of the Lambs is the only horror movie to ever win Best Picture.
interesting.
Little trivia for you.
Yep, very good.
Anyways, that is
Not
our
a horror
top
movie?
5. What now?
I'm not disagreeing with you, but I'm wondering if I would classify that movie as a horror movie.
I'm not sure I'd classify that or Jaws as a horror movie,
Yeah,
but
that for
here
that.
we are.
Yeah.
Certainly not to the point of Exorcist.
Yeah, exactly. Like, there's no paranormal. He's a serial killer, and you know it the whole time. And they're finding another serial killer. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
very interesting.
Well, and eating people on the way.
Thriller. Yeah. Okay. Well, horrific. I don't know. If
Yeah, there you go.
I'm not endorsing it. I'm just saying. Yeah. For the record, for the fans, not a romantic comedy. Yeah.
Well, there you go.
So I do have a line.
Yeah. I don't know. Buffalo Bill and the Girl in the Hole have a pretty good pretty good love story going on there.
That's right.
They really connected.
Oh, this is problematic. I need like an ejector seat button here.
I can get you off screen if we have to.
Yeah. Stay.
Oh, man.
Oh.
All right. Well, that's been our top 5 twist endings. How did you guys feel about that? Did you enjoy that list? If you did, hit that subscribe button. It helps this channel out a lot. Actually, hit the like button as well. That means quite a bit as well. Any engagement you can. Leave a list down below for your top 5 twist ending movies, or what movies you'd like us to do in the future on the next top 5. Have a good night, everybody.
Have a good night.